Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurzbacher, and today we're going to talk about freedom. For so many of us, the deepest part of the voice that calls each of us to adventure is a desire to be free. We often find that freedom in short spurts in natural and wild places. Yet, as today's guest shows us, we can find a freedom that lasts a lifetime through education. Jim Keys is with us today from Dallas, Texas. He's a global business leader, philanthropist, educator, artist, musician, commercial pilot, and a modern Renaissance man. Jim is the former CEO of two internationally recognized Fortune 500 companies, Blockbuster Inc. and 7-Eleven Inc. And as it turns out, he had a lifelong commitment to both education and adventure. Jim has recently released a new book called Education is Freedom, which I devoured. And I am so excited and honored to have the opportunity to dig a little deeper with this incredible leader. Jim, welcome to the campfire.
Thank you, Scott. Where are the marshmallows?
Oh, we're going to get through this talk and then we'll have some s'mores and then we can go even deeper. I love it. Jim, thank you. I am so honored to be able to have this conversation with you. The book was phenomenal. It is right up my alley. I'm so excited. And it's funny because when you first understood that you and I were going to have an opportunity to talk, I was like over the moon. But then I'm like, he's a business leader, the adventure piece. And then I start digging and it's like the first chapter of the book is all about adventure. I'm like, this is it. Like, this is an adventure story like no other. I am so excited. And I wonder if we could just, for starters, dive right into that kind of early beginning for you and where that thirst for adventure came from for you.
Sure, yeah. Well, let me just start by saying that I have an absolutely blessed life because every day I wake up and I literally can't wait to see what adventure will transpire for today or tomorrow, because it's true. There are amazing things that happen. And I think I have discovered the secret, if you will, or the key, no pun intended, to leading a life of adventure. And I found it comes down to knowledge. And as crazy as that sounds, ultimately your happiness really comes down to your freedom. And your freedom really comes down to your confidence. And your confidence comes down to your ability to gain knowledge. And so if you take that full circle, the more you know, the more you can do. And literally, the more adventure you can have in your life. And to me, that translates directly back to a happy life and to being fulfilled.
I mean, I'm a fan. You're speaking my language. Listeners know I'm a voracious reader. I read a lot. I mean, the more I personally for me, I mean, everything that you've said completely resonates, because it is the more that I read, the more confidence that I have, especially when I'm able to apply those things. So where did this come from for you?
I grew up with a huge advantage, Scott. I mean, I had the silver spoon of freedom. Now, what that means is that I was dirt poor. I grew up with nothing, literally 3-room shack and no plumbing, no running water in the house, and didn't know that I was dirt poor. What I had was an incredible amount of freedom as a child. And I would contrast that to the kids from the wealthy side of town who came to play, and we would climb in and out of my junk cars. We'd use our imaginations. We would sail into space in an old beat up junk car in the backyard, which was a very different experience from the very controlled environment that they grew up in, and a privileged environment, if you will, which was wonderful. but it wasn't the freedom that I had. And I began to translate the ability to live and to enjoy life to that importance of having freedom in your life. And the ultimate key for me was that, of course, you can't be poor and be, enjoying much freedom. So I had to find a way to sustain myself. And my secret weapon back then was the very adversity that causes most people to take a very different path. For me, that adversity was almost a power source, an energy source that made me want to strive for more. So yeah, that was my huge lesson in growing up. And today, really, the purpose of the book is I wouldn't want anybody to have to deal with the kinds of adversity that I had, but you don't have to, because once you recognize that adversity of any sort, that change of any kind is opportunity, you can turn it around, because it's all about your response to change and your response to adversity that separates winners from losers.
I love that. This is something I've never heard before, or at least put this way. The adversity was a power source.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
I wonder if, especially for a young kid, what was that like?
It was the ability to channel knowledge into opportunity, into doing anything I wanted to do. Now, I can't say that I knew this as a child. I can't say that, oh, wow, this is great. I have no running water. This is awesome. They just condemned our house. Wow, isn't that good?
Yeah.
I'm like any other human, was reacting probably poorly to all of the bad stuff that was happening to me. But what I didn't know at the time is that all of those negative things were giving me a sense of resiliency, a sense of independence, fierce independence, to be able to say, you know what, they can take your house, they can take your stuff, but they can't take what I know. So I'm just going to go after as much as I can learn. And nobody can ever take that away from me.
Yeah. And so you just said you didn't know at the time. And I think that's really important. I guess when you're a young kid, we don't think about these things, but in that not knowing, was there fear?
No, really, there wasn't any fear, because I didn't know anything to be afraid of. And fear comes from the unknown. And what I knew wasn't frightening at all. My existence was really fine. Now, as I looked at other kids and what they had, and I'd walk to school and I'd stop at their house and I'd walk in and I'd go, wow, it's warm inside this house. My house was freezing because we didn't have heat. Yeah. And I would say, wow, I could smell the breakfast cooking and the toast. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But it wasn't that I felt a loss because I didn't have it. It was just that, wouldn't that be nice? No one's going to give that to me, clearly. So I better go figure out how to get it myself. And it drove me with a sense of, as I said, resiliency, but also determination to succeed. I want that life. I want a warm kitchen with toast.
Yeah, I want that life. And if I want it, I have to go get it myself. That's awesome. Yeah. So, and for listeners, a lot of this is covered in the book. So we're not going to give away the whole book here. I definitely want for people to read the book because it's so good and they can hear the whole story. Plus, I have a lot of questions I want to get into with you really on a deeper level to kind of dive into some of these topics. But I really do want listeners to kind of hear the whole story. So can you take us, how did you go from that young kid into this ambitious worker that ultimately got into the highest levels of business success?
It really did come down to education. Neither of my parents even attended high school. Both of them, I think, dropped out of school in the 5th or 6th grade and went to work and had a very hard life. And my dad used to say, son, I don't know what to tell you because I don't know how to tell you to succeed, but I don't want you to have the hard life that I have. And it wasn't about money. It was interesting. He didn't say, son, I want you to go make a lot of money. He said, son, what I really want for you is to have freedom, freedom to do what you want to do, where you want to do it. He had been in World War II and had the experience of, he was driving a truck on the Burma Road as part of his job with the Army in World War II. And he'd tell me stories about the people that he'd met and the locals and their culture and what kind people they were. And he wanted that experience for me to be able to travel the world and see other cultures. But he didn't know how to tell me to get there other than to encourage me to read, because knowledge is something that no one could take away. And he equated knowledge to success. I then had the experience of having one uncle. It's the only one in my family that had any college experience at all. He was a teacher in North Adams, Mass. We'd go to his house Thanksgiving and, travel up the Mohawk Trail with the beautiful fall foliage in Massachusetts. It was always a great experience. And he lived in this palatial mansion with this giant library. At least that's what I thought.
Yeah, yeah.
I took my wife back there about 15 or 20 years ago because I wanted her to see Uncle Lenny's palatial mansion. This was the inspiration, one of the inspirations I had as a kid. And we walked up to this little tiny frame house. He was a school teacher. What kind of palatial mansion would he have?
Right.
In the public school system in North Adams. And I walked in and I was kind of shocked that the house shrunk. Maybe I grew. But I said, Uncle Lenny, show me your library. I can't wait to show my wife this library that inspired me so much as a child. And he said, Jim, look around. We don't have a library. It's like 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room, and a little washroom. And he said, oh, wait. And he took me to the washroom. And above the washer and dryer was a shelf, one shelf, full of books. And to me, as a child, I looked at those books and I equated that library, which was one shelf of books, to knowledge, to learning, to freedom, to success. And it inspired me to want to learn.
Hey everyone, it's Scott here. Did you know that the members of my real estate team, W Realty Group, are listening to their own voices that call to adventure by setting big goals? Some of those goals include planning trips to Bali and the Kingdom of Bhutan, buying investment homes, and running the Chicago Marathon. At W Realty Group, we support and encourage these big goals and want to help turn them into reality. We're currently looking to add new members to the team. If you know a great real estate agent in the Charlotte, North Carolina area that would benefit from being part of our team, please send a text, an email, or give me a call. And know that when you support W Realty Group, you're also supporting this podcast. Thanks for listening. It does show you though, because I can totally see that this is a young kid that wants to feel this and wants to believe this. And he walks in and he sees this shelf, and to this young kid, that represented everything.
It did.
It was a library.
It was. In my little mind, it was a massive library.
Yeah.
There were big books up there that had all kinds of information. And I ended up with my own set of books. I still have, believe it or not, in my library at home, the books I had as a child. I don't think I've ever thrown any away. And I talk about the importance of books and knowledge. And I usually do something like I'll hold up my phone to an audience and say, the knowledge that I had access to was a set of encyclopedias my mom brought home with a bag of groceries. They used to do these giveaways in the grocery stores. You get one volume of an encyclopedia with each bag of groceries or each trip to the grocery store. And I compare that to today, and I hold up my phone and I say, this is a portal to unlimited learning. There's virtually no excuse. I don't care how bad your school system may feel, or you may have not the best teacher in the world, but maybe you do have the best teacher in the world, but you can still supplement that teacher with unlimited access to information through technology today. So there's virtually no excuse.
Yeah. So, okay. So you've got this voracious desire to like drink in knowledge. You've got this like passion for Uncle Lenny's library and all of this. But from reading the book, what I also know is that you also developed an incredible work ethic and a willingness to work and a thirst to get after it and to go achieve. Where did that develop from, and how did that launch you into your career in business?
Of course, I don't know. I just do it. I don't even think about it. It comes naturally. I throw myself into virtually every project. But I think it came down to a recognition that I really wasn't as smart as the kids around me. I could tell in school, for example, if we had a test coming up, there were some of the kids in class that barely even had to study. I had to work. I really had to put in the time.
Yeah.
And that recognition that, okay, it doesn't come naturally for me, but if I work harder than them, I can be just as smart as them and I can do just as well on that test. Well, that awareness, that it's kind of part of self-awareness, but that recognition that I've got to put in the work, but if I put in the work, the payoff will be there. That carried over into the work environment. So my first job at McDonald's, I was lucky to get it, $1.25 an hour or something like that. And they say, okay, kid, go pick up the parking lot a quarter mile down the road, that way and that way. I would run. And everybody would look at me like, you weirdo, what do you, it's a job, it's not like you're not in training, but I wanted to outwork everybody else because I inside knew, I'm probably not more handsome, certainly, or smarter, but if I work harder, I will get rewarded for it. And sure enough, at 16 years old, McDonald made me a shift manager and let me actually have the night shift. Probably because nobody else wanted to close and have the late hours. But it was a great opportunity. And I, throughout my career, I've been able to see the direct correlation between hard work and effort and results and ultimately freedom.
Yes. And then add into that this thirst for knowledge, because it's like that's like the fuel to keep getting bigger and bigger. There's like everybody kind of has like they call them a keystone habit. Again, no pun intended, right? But some people it's exercise. For me, it's reading. And my sense is like with you, when I read something that like impacts me and it's like, hey, you can do this. I can't put that book down and say, well, that was interesting and not actually follow through and do something with it. And so like my sense is that you kind of had that same thing where you'd read something, but then you'd actually put it to action and you worked harder than most at it. And so one thing leads to another. Am I tracking with that?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just, I've been going around on this book tour talking to different audiences, and I've started to open up with a story about my life, because they'll do a bio and they'll say, oh, Jim was CEO of these 2 Fortune 500 companies and blah, blah, blah. But then I say, so, hey, I've written a song and I've composed this song, and I guarantee you it would make you cry because it's an awesome piece, and I'm not even a musician. I mean, I am, but I'm really a crappy musician, but I was a musician
nonetheless.
And anyway, and I've written a book, and I'm not an author, but I was able to write a book, and I paint, and I can paint a picture that, an image that you might want to hang on your wall, but I'm not really an artist, and I go through this whole litany of things. I'm a pilot. I fly my own airplane at 41,000 feet. How do I do all those things? Am I some abnormal human being? No, I'm about as regular a guy as anybody out there, completely. My family will tell you that. But what I did is somewhere along the way, I learned to learn. And most of us don't know how to learn. We learn in school, we learn math or whatever, but we don't really know how to learn. So learning to learn was absolutely the key to me. I've discovered I can do anything I want to do, anything. If I want to go to space, I will go to space, but I'm going to have to invest the time in learning what I need to know to get to space. There's nothing that is beyond reach if you learn how to learn.
If you have the knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to put it to work.
Yeah.
So I have so many questions that I want to get into with you. And just for context of listeners, like your time at 7-Eleven and Blockbuster, could you just share maybe one or two stories of some of the things that you're most proud of in those experiences?
Yeah, 7-Eleven was a grand adventure. It was, talk about the impact of change. When I joined the company, it was going through a lot of transformation, but we ended up doing a leveraged buyout, and the company was in bankruptcy as a result of huge interest rate increases and the financial collapse of 1987. And while many of my peers had their head down and said, "Oh, this woe is me, I have to go find another job," a lot of people quit. A lot of people, they'd leave early. They wouldn't really be very motivated because the company wasn't sure if it was going to even survive. I saw it as an opportunity. And again, that crisis stage that I went through as a child taught me, what are they going to do? Take my house? I'll still be fine. I can get through this. So while many others had their head down and felt a bit the victim, I had my head up and said, we'll get through this and we're going to be stronger and better for it on the other side. Well, it turns out I got promoted on the other side. The company restructured and reinvented itself on the other side. I was better off. The company was better off. So huge learnings in that 7-Eleven experience. Similar situation at Blockbuster. The stories about Blockbuster are all wrong. Netflix did not crush Blockbuster. $1 billion of debt on our balance sheet in the financial crisis of 2008, right after Lehman Brothers collapsed, that crushed Blockbuster. But, it was the hand I was dealt. I joined the company in 2007. We made great progress in taking it through reinvention. We bought a streaming video company from the studios that was massive competitive advantage versus Netflix. And yet the financial markets collapsing caused a set of circumstances beyond my control. Yep. Again, I could have been the victim and said, "Well, I didn't cause this problem, I'm out." Or I could have stayed with it, powered through, and found the positive solution. And that's what we did. We ended up restructuring the company, sold it to Dish Networks, and were successful in spite of the environment that we were dealt.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, I really enjoyed that part of the book. Again, I know I keep plugging the book. That's what we want. But I really enjoyed the way that you laid that out. And yeah, the market timing, I had a real estate business right at that time too. I know exactly, that was, from a real estate standpoint, an entire crisis fueled by mortgages and real estate. And so I was right in that. So just to hear your descriptions of where you all were in that whole process, it was just super helpful, and I really appreciated that. But what I wanted to move into the adventure piece, because you're not just a business guy, you are a pilot among other things, and I just wanted to kind of chat a little bit before we go into some of these questions about the book. It seems to me that beyond business, things like becoming a pilot are fuel to allow you to kind of achieve at the highest level. So I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about your piloting life and some of the fun adventures you've had there.
Sure. Well, it actually started with wanting to be an astronaut.
Nice.
So I grew up in the Apollo and Gemini era where I watched those guys land on the moon, and ultimately talk about having a blessed life. I am good friends now with Buzz Aldrin. We just had dinner about a month ago in LA.
Cool.
And yeah, he's such a great guy. And Charlie Duke, Charlie Duke was the lunar module pilot for Apollo 16, and he was kind enough to endorse the book. And he called me up and said, "Hey Jim, you want to go on a 0G flight?
Wow.
We'll promote your book. We'll hand it off in zero gravity and let it float over." And so I got to pick up Charlie and threw him in the cockpit, and we both flew down to NASA, landed on the shuttle strip. That's what I call a life of adventure. And it started with the inspiration wanting to be an astronaut, which I fell short of that goal. Obviously, as I went through college, my eyes weren't great. I knew I wasn't going to be able to be a fighter pilot and probably not an astronaut. So I just turned my attention to learning how to fly. So I have that same fulfillment in a different way.
Yeah, I love that. And as you were talking about astronauts and your experiences with them, which I just think is so cool, in the book, there was something that like really grabbed my attention. I think it's the first chapter, but you were kind of talking about conversations you were having with them about their experiences viewing the Earth from a distance. And I just wonder if you could kind of share that piece because I loved it so much.
Yeah, there's something. There are various things people call it. They call it the worldview or the overview effect, and it was really what inspired the cover of my book. This idea that even at 45,000 feet, when I'm in the cockpit of my own airplane, I can just barely see the curvature of the Earth, and the power of that view to be both humbling in the sense that here I am, a human, one of a handful of people that are at that altitude above all of the other people on the planet, but also this idea that when you're looking down on this beautiful planet Earth, even from 45,000 feet, much less from space, you don't see boundaries, you don't see borders, you don't see race or culture. You see the most beautiful planet laid out in front of you. You see nature in all of its beauty. And it really makes you stop and think that we get so caught up in the silliness of petty issues between cultures or between people that this overview effect gives you a very, very different perspective as humanity, as one individual human being, that we are so fortunate to live on this beautiful planet together. And that when I land, I want to be a better person because I am much more appreciative of this beautiful place we call home.
Yeah. It's so fun. Like the guests that I've had on the show, like people have been on all kinds of different adventures, from backyard adventures to climbing mountains and doing different things. But, again, I think one of the things I love about your book is like when you travel, when you do these experiences, you develop broader and broader perspective. And what you're talking about is not just like traveling from state to state or from country to country, but from literally like almost planet to planet, right? I mean, you're looking at the whole thing and it's just like, that's what this is all about, right? It's about broadening perspective.
It's exactly right. And it's an appreciation that with technology, with the power to be at 45,000 feet or the power to be at space, this planet Earth that used to be a mishmash of people that never left their own little geography. Now, it's truly a very small place. Thomas Friedman's book, "The World is the Earth, the World is Flat," is more true today than when he wrote it 20 years ago. And it's only going to be more and more true as technology advances and we get to leave the surly bones of Earth, as others have said, and see the world from a different perspective and interact electronically like we're doing right now. Who would have thought that we could carry on this amazing discussion just through the power of technology?
Right.
Incredible.
Right. It's amazing. So the book is Education is Freedom. Such a simple title, but it is so meaningful. And I suspect that there was probably a great deal of thought that went into those two key words, education and freedom. And I just wonder if we could dive a little deeper. What does education mean to you?
It means knowledge. It's the more you learn, the more you can do. But there's an important distinction because a lot of people are saying, well, education is not as relevant anymore. Formal education is different than it was back in the day. Many of us need the structure of a formalized education. There are people that say, college, you don't need college, just go learn a skill, learn technology. many of us need the discipline of college. We're still very immature at 17, 18 years old. And the ability to have structure and to have breadth of education is critical to building the knowledge you need to be able to survive in a very complex and a very diverse world out there. So, that's why the word education is far more important, perhaps than ever before, because of the complexity of what is education.
Well, and I'm curious too, because people that think education and they immediately think of formal education, right? That structured education. But curious your thoughts on other types of education outside of, classrooms and programs.
Yeah, it's all important. And if you do want to go into a vocation, let's say you want to be a plumber, you want to be the best plumber you can. That means a life of learning about your skill, about your art. If you want to be a pilot, and a great example, I am a pilot today, and I train with the pros, with the people who have dedicated their career to that once a year. What I learned early on is that after 40 hours, I had a pilot's license. That wasn't a license to fly. That was a license to learn. Because if I just jumped in the airplane and thought I knew it all, I'd probably crash and I'd be dead a long time ago. But I learned, and I kept learning, and I still learn today. I train once a year with the pros. They put me in a simulator, lock me in there for 3 days, and try to kill me with engine fires and thunderstorms and all kinds of horrible stuff. But I'm still learning, and I have to keep learning. So whatever it is that you choose to do, you've got the formal education. I had to learn the basic skills of flying, but then through experience, I had to learn things. And then I had to keep learning through not only experience, but going back to school over and over again. That applies to everything. And it is a very dangerous time we're in, because there's a narrative now that says, oh, you don't need all the formal education. Just homeschool your kids. And I don't mean to be against homeschooling. In some cases, it's a beautiful thing. But here's what they miss. They miss that socialization with other children very different from them. And so they're learning, yes, maybe they can learn better math and reading and other things than they would have in the classroom. But they're missing the breadth of knowledge that a formalized education gives well beyond the core curriculum. And so that's why I'm a big advocate of formal education. And the other thing, I'm a practical guy. I ran a very large company with 400,000 employees. How in the world do you ever hire people unless you've got some credentials, right?
Yeah,
all sounds good. Oh, nobody needs credentials. Well, yeah, kind of do.
Well, and it's it sounds, there's an intentionality to it. We're all learning always, all the time, right? But what we're talking about here is essentially intentionally seeking knowledge, right?
Yes. It's that proactive search for knowledge, not reactive. I'm guilty. I sat there in class and just teach, let it roll over me. I don't know, whatever. And I wasn't curious about algebra. I wasn't curious about calculus. Let me dig in here. I want to learn more. Are you kidding me? It was like, oh my gosh, I have to learn calculus. Oh, shoot me. And it would just pour over me, and some of it would stick and most of it wouldn't. That's unfortunately the way many of us learn. So what I'm trying to accomplish in the book is, these are the things I wish somebody had told me when I was a kid. Hey, Jim, here's why you learn algebra. It's got nothing to do with math. It's got everything to do with breaking complex formulas, equations into simple pieces so you can solve for it. You'll use that same skill when you have a crisis in your life and it's a really complex mess that you don't know how to fix. So you'll find that your time in solving an algebraic equation subconsciously will help you break a very complex personal problem into bite-sized pieces. You don't have parentheses in real life that you solve for first, but you'll understand the importance of breaking things down into their components so that you can come up with a solution. I wish somebody had told me that when I was sitting in class at 14 years old or something and struggling with these, algebraic equations. But it does make sense. It's all about learning to learn.
Well, you figured it out because you just used one of my favorite words. You weren't curious back then, but you developed a curiosity. In fact, curiosity is a topic that I wanted to dive into a little bit. And so we'll just go there now, and then we'll come back to freedom. Curiosity is such a big piece in your book. And I just wondered if we could talk a little bit about that, because specifically for you, like in piloting, I thought it was so interesting that like you mentioned in the book how curiosity created an interest in you to find out about aerodynamics for flying a plane and also meteorology for staying safe. And I just wondered if you could talk about that a little bit. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, well, first of all, we're all curious. I mean, we are. Do you have kids, Scott?
I do. Yes. Two girls.
Do they ever ask why?
Yes. But they do young, like at the younger age, they tend to ask why more, and then they start to lose it into the teenage years.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And, I think sometimes that we're guilty because we get tired of hearing why, and we tend to just say, oh, just shut up and go sit in the corner and watch TV or whatever. But we naturally are curious as children and as humans. But we tend to, I don't know why we do get our curiosity muted. Maybe it's the realities of life. Maybe someone discouraged us from asking why. I don't know what that cause is, but it's almost a natural evolution that we stop being as curious. And I think what you'll find is that those who never lose that natural curiosity are the adventurers of this world, are those game changers. Elon Musk is incredibly curious. Yeah. He wants to know how everything works and why everything works. And I think you'll find the same with Jeff Bezos or anyone who is a game changer in this world is driven by a curiosity to know why and to learn more. And so if you can light that back up as an individual, then you'll be lighting up your ability to learn at the same time.
Did you have to reignite your curiosity?
I did. And I have to consciously do it. And I'll give you an example. People learn how to play the piano, right? Somebody says, okay, you need to learn how to play the piano. Okay, sit down. Blah, 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 blah. Here's the notes and here's the keys and this is a C and this is a D. I did something different. I play the piano to learn. It's a very different thing. Learning to play the piano is hard work and not very fun. Playing to learn is a lot of fun. And it triggers that curiosity. So I'll sit down and just hammer out a tune or a chord progression and then I'll go, I wonder what those chords are. And I'll have to back into what those chords that I just made up actually are, what the structure is. Yeah. So I play to learn versus learning to play. It's a lot more fun and it helps to trigger that curiosity.
Yeah, I love this distinction. And like for you coming back to flying, like you talked about a curiosity for both aerodynamics and meteorology. And there was an intentionality behind both of those things.
Yeah, because I do want to live and I like life. And I found that what it used to be, it's better today because we have much better technology to avoid thunderstorms. In fact, my cockpit has this amazing display with satellite weather being able to be broadcast directly into my cockpit. And then I've got radar to supplement an actual satellite vision of precisely where the weather is. So it's a beautiful thing to have that. But still, you have to have an understanding of meteorology before you depart on a trip because the weather can change. And I had a trip one time from Arizona to Dallas. And by the time I arrived in Dallas, the weather had deteriorated so badly, I was down to minimums and the airport shut down. But I had thunderstorms to the north of me, and I basically had no option but to land, even on a closed runway. I had special permission to land because basically it was an emergency. Had I had a better understanding of the meteorology going into that flight, I probably would have either left before or after, because there was a window of about 2 hours that I ended up right in the middle of. This is why learning to fly is a license to learn. You have those experiences and you learn from them, that now I have to study meteorology even more closely so I don't ever make that mistake again.
Yeah. It's, and I love this. One of the topics in your book that we're probably not going to get into, but it's fear. And for me, like, I carry a good amount of fear in uncertain situations, whether it's being out in the wilderness or, previously, before getting educated on it, flying. And I have a good friend of mine that is a pilot. And, I used to like sitting on an airplane, like you go through some turbulence and just like this fear of like, the plane nosediving, until my friend explained to me in detail how the dynamics of the wing works. And he's basically explaining to me that, like, even if the engine shut off, like, you're still going to be able to, like, the aerodynamics are still going to work. And like, ever since he educated me on that process, like the fear went away. Cause I'm like, this is like physically and scientifically not possible. And it just gives me a lot more peace, like when I'm on the plane. And I could give you plenty of examples of things in the wilderness related to the weather, or, if somebody gets hurt, what do you do? Like, it's all like these fears that you have, you can overcome them by simply getting educated. And that's what this is all about.
Exactly. And, to build on that, candidly, fear is the single biggest killer of careers. It destroys careers because people are afraid and they become paralyzed, or they fight. And I'll share the reason for that in a minute. It's also a killer of corporations, because corporations are the accumulation of people, and corporations have fear and inertia, and it causes them to prevent them moving forward. And then even societies, you see whole peoples implode because of fear, and they start infighting. And we're seeing a little bit of that in our own society today. So I've got a great, can I give you my aviator example?
Yes, please.
How to conquer this, because it is so critically important for the individual, for the corporation, or for society to overcome this horrible disease that we have, which is fear. And it is a disease.
Yeah.
There's a portion of your brain that triggers that fight or flight impulse. And this is for self-preservation, because we had natural predators.
Yeah.
Well, we no longer have a natural predator. But you see it every day in the boardroom, fight or flight syndrome, right?
Yeah.
I don't like what you say. You're threatening my job. I'll fight to the death over it. Or I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to be passive aggressive, and I'm just not going to say a word. But I'm going to resist it. And both of those natural instincts are unnecessary in the boardroom. They were necessary to prevent us from being eaten by a predator, but they have no place, especially in the cockpit. Imagine if you're in a plane. I'm going to trigger your fear of flying again.
Yeah, let's go.
So you're in a plane, and all of a sudden you have one of those catastrophic incidents that I trained for, an engine fire, a massive decompression at 40,000 feet or something, sudden loss of pressurization in the aircraft. Do you want your pilot to fight? In other words, over control the airplane and bend a wing and spiral out of control? Do you want him to flight, be afraid, step back, go, oh, I'm scared? No. And here's what your pilot is trained to do. Can I step aside for a second?
Yeah, come on.
I'm going to show you a prop. This is an emergency checklist.
Yes.
And what it is, every pilot has one in the cockpit. And this is what we train to do to control our caveman brain. It's a secret that I'll share with everybody, because the caveman brain will kill you in the cockpit. You have to control it. In other words, you've got to suppress fear and go to what? Knowledge. So I pull out, in an emergency, pull out this checklist. I turn to the exact nature of the problem, I go through step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because I could never remember all of the sequence of actions and steps to take in an emergency. So what do I turn to? Knowledge, data that is here to supplement what I already know. And that preparation that this gives you is the difference between triggering that caveman brain and reacting and possibly dying as a result versus the aviator brain that I call it, which is using knowledge to overcome fear and have the right outcome. It's ultimately what this represents is turning on the light in the dark when you're a kid. You're scared because you think there's a monster under the bed, and you go, "Oh, mom," and she turns the light on. You go, "Oh, there's no monster." This is the light.
Yeah.
It's facts. It's data, and it lets you not be afraid once you know what to do.
That's brilliant. And I loved that section of the book. Jim, we talked about education. I want to talk about freedom, because that is, to me, that voice that calls to adventure. And that's what we talk about on this podcast. What it wants is freedom. So I wonder if you could talk about what freedom means to you.
Sure. Well, I didn't write the book to say education is big salary or education is money. It's education is freedom on purpose, because we get caught in a trap that it tends to be all about money. How much am I going to earn? How much do I have? Et cetera. And what many of us come to find is that it's not about wealth. Wealth is great. It's an enabler. But eventually you only need so much stuff. It's about those experiences in life that give you the richness of life to want to keep going and get more and more freedom. So, to me, the definition of freedom is the ability to know how to do anything I want to do, and the ability to then go do it, because I know how to learn. And if I want to go climb a mountain, I'll go climb a mountain, but I have to learn first.
Absolutely brilliant. So the book is Education is Freedom, and you've got an exciting new social media campaign going on right now. Tell us about that.
I do. I have been, again, really blessed as I go down this path. Talk about learning to learn. I had to learn social media. I think I had about 20 followers. Started 6 months ago, let's say. And step one, I had to hire somebody that knew this stuff. So I hired a 22-year-old.
Nice.
She's a genius. She has really taught me a lot about influencers and how to get things done. I had no idea who Mr. Beast was. I learned that Mr. Beast has more subscribers than most of the networks out there.
Yep.
He has 250 million plus subscribers for his YouTube videos and other videos. And what's amazing about Mr. Beast is that he is not only building this massive amount of young people as followers and subscribers, but he has learned the power of philanthropy to give back. And so what he's turned his videos to doing, he still does some fun, silly videos, stranded on a desert island and stuff like that. But he also has a whole arm called Mr. Beast Philanthropy, or Beast Philanthropy. And what they've done is some amazing things, leveraging that breadth of eyeballs, if you will, to be able to teach young people the power of giving back. So he's done things like digging wells in Africa, water wells, or curing macular degeneration, providing surgery for macular degeneration to bring vision to hundreds of people. He just did a deal in an academy called the Ron Clark Academy in Atlanta to bring 800 teachers in so they could learn from this one teacher who's transformed this entire school population in inner city Atlanta. And he brought in 800 teachers to learn that. So I was very fortunate because his team called me up and said, "Would you like to collaborate?" I said, yes, absolutely. Wow. So they said, well, what if we give away some scholarships? And I then said, well, what if instead of making them write an essay or some traditional way of getting scholarships, why don't we use your medium? Why don't we have them read this book, and we'll provide a free copy online, an abridged copy if needed, if they don't have the money to buy a book. We'll let them read the book, and then let's ask hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of young people all over the world. Let's have them tell us what education is freedom means to them.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
It's so cool. It is so cool. I mean, what a great partnership for Mr. Beast, a great partnership for you. Like, this is amazing. So can you tell us about this? How can people get involved? How can people participate?
Well, we're going to run it through August 1st of this year. And so all they have to do is go to educationisfreedombook.com, which is the title of the book. So educationisfreedombook.com.
Okay.
They will then see a video that gives them the instructions, and they will find a tab to either order the book, and you can order it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever. Or if you sign up for the offer of a potential scholarship, then you can download a free abridged version. So either read the full book or read the abridged version. And then once you really understand what the opportunity is, what education means and freedom means, then we want you to put it in your words. And that's what gets me so excited, is we have already started seeing videos from children in Argentina, in the Middle East, in India, and they're saying, I believe in education because it will transform my life, or education is going to help me feed my family. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to see straight from the heart. These kids are just pouring their heart out, talking about why it's important to learn how to learn. It's a beautiful thing.
I love this so much. So people can find out more about this at educationisfreedombook.com.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Or just go to my Instagram or TikTok or any of my social media pages, J Keys Author, JKEYES Author. And they'll find the links to participate in the scholarship program.
Wow. Jim, at the highest levels, like global business leader, philanthropist, musician, commercial pilot. I mean, and now this partnership with Mr. Beast, there's no doubt in my mind that at some point Hollywood is going to want to make a movie about your life.
I got some more things to accomplish first. So.
Okay, well, but it's coming though. It's coming. And I want to know, when they do, who's going to be the Hollywood actor that's going to play you in your movie?
Well, I like to tell I tell family and friends, of course, it's going to be Brad Pitt, and then nobody buys it. They don't buy that for a minute. And then my second choice, of course, is Tom Cruise, because of course he's a pilot and he flies a P-51 Mustang. I think the reality, though, is some people have told me I look like Kevin Spacey, so I wouldn't be surprised if he got the nod.
I love it. This is fantastic. And what's your movie going to be called?
Well, the natural would be Education is Freedom, but I don't know if we want to make the movie called Education is Freedom. I think it might be The American Dream.
The American Dream.
Because that's what I'm living. I'm living the American dream. And in the American dream, what's so beautiful about the American dream, it's available to anyone, anywhere in the world, because of the power of knowledge and the power of technology to bring unlimited learning to anyone and let them too enjoy what we affectionately call the American dream.
Yeah. Education is freedom. Jim, thank you so much for the time that you spent with me today. I've learned so much from you. The book was amazing. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing. And I think that this scholarship opportunity that you're offering to young people of the world is just terrific. And thanks to you and Mr. Beast for putting that together. And for those listening, I hope you have been inspired today as much as I have. I hope Jim's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or just need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thanks for listening. Jim, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Scott. Really enjoyed it. Good luck to everybody.